In episode 4 of Hazbin Hotel, we got the massive reveal that Husk was once an Overlord, with him now being at the mercy of Alastor. Some fans have speculated that this was the case since the pilot of Hazbin Hotel, so we're going to break down why that is, what it could mean for Husk's past, and whether or not that potentially means Nifty may have been an Overlord as well. My name is ImpCut, hit that subscribe button to bring us to 700,000 subscribers, and I know a lot of you love hearing me break down the complex real-life lore behind the Helliverse, so go check out the breakdown I did earlier this week on the new indie animated series called Broken Beat, where I explain the crazy cool approach to the Garden of Eden narrative in their first episode. Link in the pinned comment down below. Now, when Angel is complaining about how messed up his life is, Husk chimes in explaining his life is similarly messed up because he was once an Overlord of great power, and now he is on the leash of Alastor, the more notable and well-known Overlord. However, the first hint that Husk may have been an Overlord actually came back in the pilot, when Vaggie is giving a talk about Alastor and his place in the history of the Overlords. At one point, we see a lineup of the various Overlords with Vox at the very top and Alastor near the bottom. However, if you look closely at him, you see two shadowy versions of Husk and Nifty on each side of Alastor. Because of this, many fans have been theorizing for years now that Husk, and perhaps even Nifty, are actually Overlords themselves since they are featured here. With Husk in this episode being confirmed to be an Overlord, it makes it even more likely that Nifty was or is an Overlord too, but we should still be open to the idea that Nifty is not an Overlord, but like Husk, she may have sold her soul to Alastor, and that may be why they are both featured alongside him in this little mashup of Overlords, not because of their actual power level. Now, an Overlord is someone of great power in Hell, the primary power behind them being human souls, which are traded among sinners with demonic deals. Alastor was claimed in early livestreams to not be a traditional Overlord, as he does not seek powers the way that the other Overlords do, but so far that doesn't quite seem to be true, at least on the surface. Even in the pilot, Alastor has an interest in making a deal with Charlie, one that would presumably cost her something dear, and Alastor is slowly working on Vaggie, getting her used to the idea of deals being mutually beneficial, and Alastor being trustworthy enough to one day make a more serious deal with. Like Vox, he also has a unique control over an industry through his natural power, controlling the radio waves the way Vox controls TV. Unlike Vox, Alastor seems content to just use the power that he already has, and his interest in demonic deals may be about power now that he is coming back to seemingly defeat Vox, but before that he seems to have had more interest in who he was making deals with as opposed to the power it could bring him, looking for unique people to own that he knows he can use in certain ways like Husk and Nifty. Now, with most Overlords, the collection of souls seems to reflect their power in an industry like Vox with TV or Alastor with radio. Carmilla we know to be an Overlord of angelic weapons, someone who has not just wealth, but seemingly a part in the millions of souls that the Overlords collectively own thanks to her deals that she made, likely with other demons who wish to use her business with their own infrastructure to be a part of her new emerging market. Similarly, Vox likely gained a lot of power by making demonic deals with people who had important places in the technology that already existed in Hell before he brought in his screen-based TV technology. We don't know what the Overlord Rosie rules over per se, but she seems to be an Overlord with a lot of power in the cannibal colony in particular, perhaps stemming from her shop, which I imagine to specialize in either sinner flesh you could cannibalistically eat, or vintage furniture and such that helps the cannibal district maintain its classic Americana look. Husk is not explicitly said to be the Overlord of any industry in particular, but we can make a few solid guesses with the evidence in the show. According to early livestream lore, Husk died in the 1970s, decades after Angel had died, but with Husk not dying until he was about 75, he was actually older than Angel on Earth too, with Angel dying tragically much younger. Now, the exact details on Husks' backstory are bound to change, but from the possibly outdated livestream and behind-the-scenes information that still seems reflected in his character, Husk was a Vegas magician, and while he seemed to find success there, he also picked up the typical Vegas addiction such as gambling and booze. Now, as an Overlord, he mentions that he was big on gambling, but he doesn't mention that as being how he initially started dealing in souls. While it's possible he was essentially the Overlord of the gambling industry and would also take part in the gambling games instead of just running them, he may also have just found success similar to how he did on Earth, being a rather famous magician. When talking about Husk in early live streams, Visipop said that Husk was the most representative of the idea of a has-been, and episode 4 really emphasized that. Regardless of how Husk got his power originally, he was definitely gambling away his power and likely the souls he had acquired. He mentions making a deal himself to save his power, with the visuals confirming that it was Alastor that he made a deal with, and is now under the direct control of. He said he did this to maintain his power, but from there, it's a bit blurry on what actually happened. As a gambler with an addiction, Husk could have just gambled away what little power this deal may have made him retain, with him seen still gambling when he is first pulled away by Alastor in the pilot. Being under contract with Alastor may give Husk the access to a certain amount of physical power similar to what he wielded before, but he doesn't seem to have been using the deal with Alastor to maintain some sort of business or anything, and as he clearly says, he used to be an Overlord, so whatever deal he made with Alastor has not maintained that status in the long run. I would imagine that gambling is probably super big in Hell, with more and more people being drawn to it over time as their conditions get worse, and it becomes something a lot of sinners probably see as a last-ditch effort to turn their existence around in Hell, before just leaving themselves out for some exorcist at the next extermination. I almost wonder if around the time of the year of the annual extermination, if certain souls just aren't seen as worth gambling because that person may be seen as likely to just go take their life right afterwards. A lot of demons, even if they find some success, likely become addicted to the gambling and the idea that they can win more, and inevitably just end up losing the power again with more gambling. With that in mind, and how widespread gambling seems to be even without Husk Overlord status, I don't imagine him as being someone who brought gambling into Hell the way Vox seems to have brought TV into Hell. If Husk was gambling in souls, he wouldn't want to truly gamble his own away, and him making a deal with Alastor for access to more souls to gamble with may have been the only way he thought that he could keep going, with him thinking that being owned by Alastor is better than his soul being owned by whoever wins it in the next game. And Alastor may find Husk more useful on a personal level than the combined power of a few different souls that he had acquired over time. As you can see, there really is endless possibilities on how this could really play out and what Husk's true backstory is going to be in the show, and I imagine we'll be getting a lot more detail on that later in the season, or of course in Season 2, which has already been greenlit by Amazon in A24 before Season 1 had even aired. It's interesting to me that Husk and the other Overlords have such vague backstories within the show so far. With the 7 Princes of Hell in Hell of a Boss, there is an inherent understanding of the nature of their influence because of the real-life mythology and us exploring their rings while meeting them. We don't see the inside of Rosie's shop as we meet her, however, or see Zestiel doing his business the way that we see the 3 Vs doing theirs. Some have suggested that Zestiel in particular may be the Overlord of information or something to that extent, with him having particular interest in getting information out of Alastor and seemingly providing information for perspective on how the angels would react if they started to fight back during the meeting, but it's hard to say how exactly this would pan out as an industry within the show. Hopefully each of these Overlords will get some time exploring what they really do and how they got there and the influence it has on Hell. It would be really fun to have the has-been characters visiting these various Overlords for different episode subplots and us exploring their lives a bit in the way we do with these 7 rings and other royals of Hell of a Boss. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and don't forget to check out the video I made breaking down the crazy cool lore of this indie animated pilot called Broken Beat. If you love the crazy connections I can find in Has-Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss, you'll want to check out the video even if you don't know what Broken Beat is. See you guys there.